So for the demo, we're just going to look at building a fabric for some Dell EMC vSAN ready nodes. So just select the node or select the solution that you're trying to build a fabric for. First thing you need to do is give it a name that makes sense. So I'm just going to call this Data Center 01. Here you can see that we've got options to add both the management cluster and some compute into the cluster. We're just going to add some compute for now. So you can simply click on add again. Give this cluster some sort of name that makes sense so you understand what the cluster is for. Select the appliance that you're going to be using. So I'm just select some R640s here. Now, how many nodes? Obviously this determines how many ports will be allocated. And this future nodes is how many nodes might be added to the environment. Select the link type. So we're going to select a 25 gig here. Also going to add in an extra PCIe card, so we'll have quad 25 gig links per node. And at this point, you could just go and click on OK, but you'll get an error. So this is now telling us, hey, you've added some extra ports in here, but those ports haven't been allocated. So that's that add-in PCIe NIC. So we're going to use those ports, and the way we do that is we come down here to this teaming and bonding. You can see there's already a bond set up, and the network daughter cards are in the first bond. So we need to add the PCIe cards. So we'll go and select both of those cards, and that's it. We've now created bond 0. Now the other thing we should do is actually add some VLANs as well to use this. So even if we don't add that extra bond, you should still add a workload VLAN. So here I'm just going to add a couple of workload VLANs, stick them on bond 1. Now we can go OK. So now we've done that, we've got all the details that we need for the cluster. We could add more if we wanted. You can, like I said, you could add the management node. This option here, effectively, if we tick that, everything gets added in a single rack. It does a sort of top of rack design. If unticked, it'll build a full leaf spine fabric. So now it's going away, and based on that information, it's designing a fabric for us. And that's it. The fabric is now being designed. So here we have a rough sort of rack layout of what's going on, the 2 top of rack switches, a management switch. You can see the R640s below, the blue ones, and these 2 extra ones that we said were that extra expansion. It gives us a network view. So this is sort of network topology, showing how it all, the overall network topology is part of the design. Of course, you can download this diagram and use this. It gives you a wiring diagram. So now we can see details at a port level for each switch. So what port plugs into what network interface on the nodes. It's all mapped out for us, including here these F labeled ones, which are the future expansion ports for those extra couple of nodes that we said we might expand into. And it gives us a bill of materials. Now, as well as supplying a bill of materials, there are some options that you can change here as well. So you can change the airflow, how long the uplink cables are, whether or not you want that management switch, and also where the top of rack switches go. So it defaults to middle. We can actually put the top of rack switches in top, maybe change the cable length for those uplinks, and say, cool, we don't want a management switch. So once you've made those changes and click OK, it'll now go away and recompute the bill of materials for you. And that's all done. It's just that simple and that easy. You can see now when we pop back into that logical view that the management switch is gone because we've said we don't want that. You can also define some more network configuration. So this is real sort of customer, what IP addresses, etc. they have. Here I'm just going to simply, add a basic DNS sort of server in here. This is really important when it comes to the configuration files that we can download, which we'll get to shortly, but clearly having the correct information here is imperative to making sure that the configuration files are going to be what's required on site at a customer. So once you build the fabric, these configuration files can be downloaded so that the switches on day one can be set up You can use these config files. You can download it as an Ansible playbook or an ASCII file, and there's no config work that needs to happen on the switch, no typing commands in. Use the config file, reduce all the human error. Now, the other cool thing you can do is you can obviously get a view on everything that's going on here. You can have a look at the individual nodes, switches within the design. But what if you want more than just that one vSAN cluster within the fabric? So here's a little trick. You need to click on the rack. Now it turns blue. Now we have this option over here to add a workload. So now you can click on that. Now you get options to add a workload. So let's say we do want a management cluster. We're just going to add a little VxRail management cluster. Again, quickly give it a name that makes sense. Tell it what kind of appliance you're using for these, how many. Again, we know we're using 25 gig here. No need to add extra bond this time, but let's add in an actual workload VLAN. Clearly all this VLAN information needs to really align to your customer environment. It's just a quick demo here. So now it's rebuilding the fabric and adding in that extra workload. So now we can see, here's our little management cluster, sorry. The network view has been updated. What if we want to add more? And you can. So same trick, add on, let's say we add our little Power Edge server that we want to use as a backup server. So add that in. Again, just give it a name that makes sense. I'm going to choose my favorite Power Edge server there, that R740XD. Need one of those, 25 gig. Again, just going to add in a VLAN for some actual workload traffic. And again, it just goes away and recomputes the cluster. Now clearly the cluster there is not being redesigned, but what does happen is the bill of materials gets updated. So we can see that the number of cables that it's added for all these appliances is all added up for us. And you can see the quantity of each of these appliances here to make sure that, you know, it all sort of makes sense. You know that you're basically going to end up with 12 nodes and 3 VxRail nodes and a backup server. And it just makes it easy to get that bill of materials together really quickly. You can save this design. This simply downloads it as a JSON file that you can then restore, so that when you come back into Fabric Design Center, you don't have to start from scratch again. So that was a quick overview. I hope that was useful, and I hope that makes sense. Cheers.